Well, I just survived my first 4th of July here in Southern California, and I want to say, yes, we do know how to party. I heard more explosions and I smelled more gun smoke in Southern California than I did in Southern Lebanon during the war. And it was really fun and it was really amazing to be a part of this. And before I go too far, as an Israeli watching this, I want to say something important. Happy birthday, United States, and thank you for your support of Israel and of the Jewish people down through history. America was the first country that recognized Israel in 1948, and I have to say, America has been standing behind Israel down until the modern period. But I will want to add something else. My family emigrated from Eastern Europe to the United States in the beginning of the 20th century, and America opened its gates and was better and more supportive of its Jews than any other nation in the history of Western civilization, which is why I think it's important to remember that I think there's a connection between the prosperity in America and how a country actually respects its Jews. And I want to say thank you. Thank you, America, for accepting my family. Thank you for supporting Israel. And we're here to hope and pray and understand why America needs to support Israel more. For those of you not from America, I guess we can appreciate this, but I know that not everybody watching is American. So when it comes time, we will say thank you. I heard there's a new election in Britain, and I am planning on being in New Zealand sometime next year. So let's see if we can connect some of that as we go along. Let's talk about what's going on in Israel. And there's a negotiation going on. Some people call it a hostage negotiation. Some people call it a ceasefire negotiation, depending on what side you're on. Israel is trying to release its hostages through some kind of an agreement with the Hamas. We've given up completely finishing off Hamas and them surrendering. And the idea is to get as many of the hostages out as we can. We think most of them are already dead. Hamas is trying to reach a ceasefire and get the world powers to press Israel into a ceasefire and hopefully to be triumphant by survival, basically, for lack of a better word. And that is actually happening right now. And it is in American interest and the interest of the rest of the world to have some kind of an agreement. I don't like this agreement. It's stuck in my throat, and I kind of don't want to say everything I want to say about this. But again, hopefully it will release some of the hostages. But the question is how the agreement's going to come around. And in order to explain that, there's a couple of terms, names, connections I want you to have in your mind as we go forward. The last piece of real estate that Israel didn't actually conquer in Gaza is the city of Rafiah. That's the city that actually sits on the border, straddles the border between Israel and Egypt. And the city of Rafiah actually is the main stronghold left of the Hamas in the Gaza Strip. And everybody's all about Rafiah and about everything that's happening. There's no humanitarian crisis. There's no genocide. I mean, there's no ethnic cleansing. But right now, there's some kind of stalemate that is actually taking place there. The border between one side of Rafiah to the other side, or between the Israeli side and the Egyptian side, or between, Egypt and what's happening in Gaza with the crossing, the Rafiah crossing in the border is called the Philadelphia Corridor. The name Philadelphia actually is left over from old Israeli military maps. When I was there in the 1980s and 90s, it was actually, I don't know if you know, but on military maps, routes have names, and somebody chose Philadelphia for the name of this route running from the Israeli border on one side to the Mediterranean on the other side. And Israel actually is sitting on the Philadelphia corridor, and the idea is not to allow arms, weapons, money to actually be smuggled in tunnels underneath the Philadelphia corridor from the Egyptian part of Rafah to the Palestinian part of Rafah. Israel is trying to control that, and it looks like in any future agreement, Israel will be sitting on the Philadelphia corridor. Hamas is fighting against that. The second name I want you to remember is the Netzarim corridor. The Netzarim corridor is actually the route that runs through the middle of the Gaza Strip on the Gaza River. It's called the Netzarim corridor because there was an Israeli town called Netzarim that sat on the middle of that road. But basically, it cuts the Gaza Strip into two, and Israel is saying at the end of any agreement, we want to sit on the Netzarim corridor and control fighters that come from the southern part into the northern part of Gaza because we don't want to be attacked again. Another thing you need to remember is the northern buffer. Israel is saying that we will create a mile and a half wide buffer on the northern edge of the Gaza Strip, and that will be a no man's land. Nobody will be allowed into that, and that is Israel's way of making sure that what happened on October 7th will not happen again. So that's part of all of this negotiation. That's on the Israeli side. What the Hamas wants is just to survive and to be a part of whoever governs the Gaza Strip at the end of this whole process. America is putting everything in its power to make this happen. The Biden administration is looking at this as some kind of, I'm going to say, for lack of a better word, fig leaf that they can actually use to cover how terribly they handled this whole conflict and how terribly they've handled everything that's going on in the Middle East ever since, and hoping that they can put a fig leaf here and say, okay, we did something in the Middle East before the election actually comes around. That is what's happening in Gaza right now. And by the time this comes out, there might be some kind of agreement. I doubt it. It looks like Israel is willing, America really wants to, but Hamas hasn't actually agreed to allow itself to be taken out of the game. Let's go to the north. The north, an organization called Hezbollah, and the terminology I want you to remember in what's happening in the north is, first of all, Hezbollah is an Iranian proxy that is doing Iran's bidding, that is set up shop in southern Lebanon and is using southern Lebanon as a base to attack Israel from. They're not Lebanese, but they are actually embedded inside Lebanon. Lebanon is a totally failed country. Its government isn't functioning, so the Hezbollah is actually in that power vacuum, set up shop and using that to attack Israel. Which means that when Israel retaliates, we retaliate against Lebanon, and the world is kind of screaming, you're retaliating against civilian population, and so forth and so on. Hezbollah is much more dangerous than Hamas is, as far as the numbers, the training, the abilities, the capabilities that they have. And they have the ability or the capability to actually endanger everything that's going on in the Middle East, which is why America here also is trying to put a lid on this. And the thing is, Israel cannot allow the Hezbollah to sit in northern Lebanon and to actually basically ethnically cleanse or to move out all of the population on the northern part of the border because they have a political agenda. Which is why Israel has been pushing or trying to negotiate for Hezbollah to move a little bit further away from the northern border in Israel. And another term I want you to remember is the Litani River. Here's a picture of the Litani River and the area, the buffer zone that Israel is talking about between us and Lebanon, where no Hezbollah armed forces will be allowed to enter. And that will give Israel a little bit of security on the northern border. Otherwise, we are going to have to go in and actually take that area ourselves. So Israel is saying if we can get to that kind of agreement through negotiation, that'll be better. But here's the thing. And another term I want you to remember is Resolution 1701, UN Resolution 1701, which actually was signed by the United Nations, that actually says that the Hezbollah should not be south of the Litani. There was a resolution that was agreed upon, but the United Nations actually put UNIFIL, which is a United Nations force, in all these places around southern Lebanon, but none of them enforced the actual agreement that Hezbollah signed. So there is an agreement. All Israel is asking is, please uphold the agreement, move the Hezbollah away from us to across the Litani border, and that should solve part of the problem. So that's the situation in the south. That's the situation in the north. There's the feeling that we're this kind of pause right now until something actually happens and something comes together. Which brings me to another connection. And again, That's why we call this the Balagan connection. I love the way God sometimes connects different things from different stories. And I want to open up a passage from the book of Acts. Some of you might remember this as the story of Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch. And what I found fascinating, I came across this a couple days ago, was where this takes place. And I'm going to be reading from Acts chapter 8, verse 26. And it says this: "And the angel of the Lord spoke to Philip, saying, Arise, go toward the south, along the road which goes from Jerusalem to Gaza," which I find very fascinating. And this is a desert area. And he arose and he went, and behold, a man of Ethiopia, eunuch of great authority under Candace, the queen of the Ethiopians, who had charge of all her treasury and had come to Jerusalem to worship, was returning to, I guess, Ethiopia, was sitting in his chariot, and he was reading the prophet Isaiah. And to make the long story short, Philip said, do you know what you're reading? And he said, no, I don't. And Philip rode with him in the chariot as they rode. And in the end of this process, this Ethiopian actually who had come to worship in Jerusalem was saved and baptized and brought the gospel down to Ethiopia. What I found fascinating about this is, what is this guy doing in Jerusalem? Where is he coming? What is he doing in Jerusalem, and why is he in Jerusalem? And that connects to another passage that I'm going to read from 1 Kings chapter 8 that actually says this. When Solomon was dedicating the temple that Solomon built in Jerusalem on top of Mount Moriah, one of the things he said is, moreover, concerning a foreigner who is not of your people Israel, but has come from a far country for your name's sake, for they will hear your great name and your strong hand and your outstretched arm. When he comes and prays towards the temple, here in heaven, your dwelling place, and do according to all that this foreigner calls to you, and all the peoples of the earth may know your name and fear you as do the people of Israel, and that they may know that this temple which I have built is called in your name. Solomon is building a temple. This is first temple period. And he's already thinking about foreigners who come to Jerusalem to be close to God. And why does this connect to me? Because a lot of you watching me are these kind of foreigners who Solomon was talking about all the way back in the book of Kings, and Philip was baptizing in the name of the Spirit in the book of Acts. And maybe this is a place to connect to one more thing. I will be going back to Israel, and one of the things that I'm going to be doing is bringing together a group of people that will stand on a hill overlooking Gaza on the 7th of October. Meaning on the anniversary of this terrible atrocity, me and other Christians will be on our knees on this hill, just praying for the peace of Jerusalem. And after that, we'll be going to the people in the areas that were affected by this event, showing our love, showing our solidarity, a memorial service, laying a wreath down on one of the memorials, and basically showing Israel that Christians support and love them. We will be going to different places to learn about what happened. We will do a day of prayer and solidarity on the Sea of Galilee for the northern part of Israel. We will be helping in an archaeological dig and supporting Christian ministries with a little bit of help here and there, studying about what happened. It is a 5-day tour in Israel, and it will be led by me and Tom Hughes from Hope for Our Times, which is why, if you want to be on that hill with us on the 7th of October, showing your solidarity for Israel, if you want to be part of something that I think will create an amazing memory, go into the Gihon Springs website. Down here at the bottom, there's a link. Go into the Gihon Springs website or contact me in the comments here, and we can connect you to this trip going to Israel. It is filling up kind of fast. So if you are interested in something like this, I need you to push the button as quickly as possible, and let's get as many people as we can headed to Israel in order to show the Jewish people what Christian love actually means. One of the reasons I'm really excited about this is because this is a trip that is being organized by Gijón Springs, a ministry that I am a part of, and is going to be a trip in the name of Pastor Jeff Johnson, who is the pastor of Calvary Chapel Downey. Pastor Jeff and Karen have been great supporters of Israel for 30 years or more. And Pastor Jeff passed away a little while ago, and this trip is in his memory, and it makes me excited to be a part of continuing Jeff Johnson's legacy and connection and support and solidarity with Israel into the future. So, foreigners who come to pray in Israel, just like the Ethiopian, just like Solomon talked about in the beginning, that's the Balagan connection for today. And we need your prayer. We need your support. If you do want to support me and Christy and everything that we're doing, go down to the Gijón Springs website. We're one of the ministries that the Gijón Springs supports. If you want to come with us, that is also going to be an amazing event. And that's the Balagan connection for today. Hope to see you soon.